See me?
ये हाँ आ रही है, आपकी आवाज आ रही है, बिल्कुल आ रही है।
Hi, Shilpi.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly. You are audible as well as visible. A very pleasant afternoon to all our participants in this post-lunch session on day 3 of the 2-week online interdisciplinary refresher course on cinema, society, and education, being brought by the IQAC of ARST College in collaboration with the Ministry of Education's Teaching Learning Center, Ramanujan College, University of Delhi. I, Dr. Shubha Dwivedi, on behalf of the organizing committee, extend a hearty welcome to our resource person for today, Ms. Shilpi Gulati, and also all our participants who have joined us from distant locations and on this knowledge venture. And today's session, friends, is going to be really significant in terms of diversifying, as we will be talking about, we will be including, the various performance traditions of our country. And as you all know that India is a land of rich cultural diversity and has thousands of indigenous performance traditions, which have not been only providing mass entertainment to people, but have also fulfilled certain emotional and social needs. They have also been used as an indigenous instruments of interpersonal, intergroup, and intervillage communication for ages. These traditions are part of human intangible cultural heritage, as the need for song, music, mirth, and group entertainment is profoundly ingrained in human nature. The folk traditions have also been used extensively to raise vital social, political, cultural awareness among the populace, fostering social consciousness among both the rural and the urban people of our country. Now we are at a critical juncture, where we have seen this paradigm shift from the traditional modes of entertainment to this splurge of entertainment, which is coming from diverse channels and platforms, OTT platforms, digital entertainment channels, which I should say. And all of a sudden, there's a drift from family consumption or group consumption to individual consumption, and the needs of the individual have been emphasized and being provided for, I should say. And we realize that somewhere, individual is being ignored, and his social needs or needs of group life or community life are being, unlooked or unprovided for. And on the other side, we see that the theater industry, let's give some blame to pandemic as well. I mean, due to pandemic and because of social distancing, and otherwise also with the technological intervention and so many platforms of entertainment in present times available, people are diverting, they are deviating from the traditional modes of entertainment. And as a result, these folk traditions are on the verge of extinction. Now, our college particularly has taken a call on this and is extremely conscious of their responsibility towards preserving and promoting this heritage, this legacy of culture. And we have undertaken some projects, some research projects in this area. And today, again, it's our privilege to have amidst us a resource person who has done commendable work in the field. And before that, I just would like to use the quotation that Professor Sudhish Pachori, our learned resource person from yesterday's lecture, said. He said, मैं quote करती हूँ, हम कल्चरल फिल्में बनाते हैं तो सांस्कृतिक रूप से पूर्ण होते हैं, कंज्यूमरिस्ट डिमांड से हटकर फिल्में बनाना जरूरी है. So let's think over these ideas given by Professor Sudhish Pachori, and also what we have been feeling from quite some time, to go back to our native traditions, to our indigenous traditions, which can connect us with our own selves, as they will also connect us with our brethren, with our own community, with our society. And in this context, it's my honor and my privilege to introduce you to our extremely talented, award-winning new age director, Shilpi Gulati, filmmaker with a difference, theater artist, and a researcher who is bringing unique voices to the screen. Her work predominantly engages with oral histories, feminist narratives, performance, and community-based media practices in India. She is a two-time recipient of the President's National Film Award for her documentaries Kissa-e Parsi, The Parsi Story, and Tala the Kunji, Lock and Key. which along with her other works, Nach Bhikhari Nach and Dere Tum Dili, have been screened extensively. Her documentary Kissai Parsi won the National Award for the Best Ethnographic Film, and her other works, Inside Out, Dere to Delhi, and Lock and Key, have been screened at various festivals in Asia, Europe, and the US. Shilpi has a background in theatre and has been a core member of a feminist activist group, Pandy's Theatre, and has over 15 years of experience with stage productions and workshop theatre with marginal communities. She is currently teaching documentary theory and practice at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. Now, I'm sure that all of you are aware of the persona and the works of Bhikhari Thakur, who is a cultural icon in a great sense, and whose plays and songs have touched the lives of the common people. But for the beginners, I would just like to briefly mention that he was a poet of the people, a theatre artist, an active dramaturge, a social reformer, and he was also referred to as the Shakespeare of Bhojpuri by Jagdish Chandra Mathur. And he's perhaps one of the most legendary names when it comes to the story of the Bidesya. Now, I'm using this word with caution because Shilpi would know that the term has a history, and there are various theories around the proliferation of this term, which is often used to tales or plays based on the lives of the migrants. So Bhikhari Thakur integrated humanity, and he combined social movements and his popular folk theatre Nach. He used popular folk theatre Nach as a socially relevant machinery. With this background, I now like to hand over to Shilpi, who is going to speak on documenting Bhikhari Thakur, theory and practice of representing performance traditions in films. Over to you, Shilpi.
Thanks, Shubha. And Shubha, one request, you stay here on your video, okay? Because I need someone to address my lecture to. Otherwise, it's just too, so you stay here. And of course, everybody else is around, but it's just a little disorienting to have, 200 screens which are on and off. So this is, so please stay.
You should be comfortable because these are, you can treat them as your students, because all our participants are, lovely people, and they love to interact, and they listen patiently to all our speakers. So please settle down, and you can start whenever you feel like.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Shubha, and thank you for inviting me to this platform and to seeing that I'm a part of so many different kinds of lectures which are taking place over the next few days. So it's a privilege to be here. Thank you so much. It's always a privilege to be able to talk about your work, your work which is not in the mainstream, your work which is of another world, which is the world of documentary. In this particular case, I'm be talking about my film, which looks at folk tradition. And thank you so much for already introducing Bhikhari Thakur to our audiences, because it just takes off 10 minutes from what I was going to say. So I'm very happy that you've done the groundwork for me. And of course, we'll be engaging deeper with ideas of what it is to represent Bhikhari Thakur, So for today's talk, lecture, I wanted to sort of bring in my world of filmmaking and documentary filmmaking. Yes.
Can you raise your volume a bit? I don't know whether it is me only or others are also.
Is it too low? Is it too low?
Yeah, a bit low. You are audible, but if it can be in.
I'll just talk louder, right? Is this fine? This is fine? Okay. Also, Shubha, please feel free to stop me in case my internet has stopped, or you can't hear me. Like, just stop me, and I'll be happy to repeat myself. So what I was saying was that in today's lecture, I would like to talk about or bring my world as a documentary filmmaker to everybody here. All 221 of us. And usually my lectures are directed at film students, at filmmakers, at artists, who are looking at South Asian documentary as a form. But it's very unique to be able to take your world to a completely different world of educators, And I thought to myself last night, and I said, what is it about my work which would be interesting, or how can I share or open up my world to educators in a way that would be enriching for all of us, And I decided that what I will do is that I will keep my film, Nach Bhikhari Nach, at the focus, and would like to share with you some of the ways in which me and my co-director Janendra Dost, both of us, made certain political and ethical decisions about the task of representing somebody, like Bhikhai Thakur, So in other words, what is the politics and ethics and of the aesthetics that we create as filmmakers, And what are the certain kind of negotiations we have in mind? What are the discourses that we engage with our hearts? And what is it that goes behind the making of a film, which is one on a folk tradition in India, secondly, in a place like Bihar, and thirdly, about a person who is very well known in certain parts of Bihar and Eastern UP, but is sort of not known in so many other different cultural spaces of the country and the world, Another very big conundrum that we had before ourselves, or a challenge that we had before ourselves, was also to be able to capture a performance tradition itself. Janindra and I are both students of GNU. We are doing Jaindra's finished his doctoral research on the same topic. And one of the things that we engaged with in performance studies and cinema studies was also the fact that how do you mediatize a live performance? As you know, Bhikhai Thakur's performances and the Launda Nach performance tradition starts at 10 in the night and goes on till 5 in the morning. And it is sometimes before 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 people. And here we are trying to make a 1 hour or 1.5 hour long documentary film on a performance tradition, which is, or any kind of performance practice, right? It's live, you are there, you witness it, it's ephemeral, it's affective, right? And the biggest challenge of filmmakers who document performance is to say, how do we capture it in another format, which is different? It's film, it's projection. It's the absence of bodies. It's the absence of presence of bodies that collectively watch together, we were keeping some of these things in mind, and we knew these are the challenges we are going to face, The other challenge that every documentary filmmaker faces is the challenge of representing the other. You're not representing yourself, you're representing the other. You are putting a camera to someone's face, capturing somebody's life, and you have so much power to show how you want to show them, to choose how you want to show them, It's actually an unequal power relationship between people who are filmmakers and people we make films on. So the documentary filmmaker and the documentary subject inherently has an unequal power relationship. I can go to Bihar and I can shoot this film in a way where I can show that these people are dirty or vulgar or very low culture and low caste. I can make a film like that. Or I can go back again and make another film which is about validating Bhikhai Thakur and Bhikhai Thakur's performance tradition. So what happens is that I have a lot of power. I have a lot of power in hand as a filmmaker, as a camera person, as an editor, because I choose to pick whatever I want to pick from my footage and assemble this world together. So I just wanted to highlight that as filmmakers who are jumping into this world, and I do this with every film of mine, you have to understand what position of privilege are you standing at from wherever location that you are in, and you're a filmmaker, and what do you do about it, and how do you make creative choices that justify some of the conundrums that you're facing. So that's one thing. The other thing I wanted to say to everybody here, who may not be familiar with some of the very basic things on documentary theory or documentary filmmaking, I wanted to just put out there. And we can obviously talk about it later when we are in the Q&A session. So I will talk for about an hour, and I'll share clips of the film with everybody. And we can keep the last half an hour for discussion. So one of the other things that I wanted to tell the audiences here is that, as documentary filmmakers or academics, or even viewers, it's very important to understand that documentary is not a naive representation of reality. Okay, documentary is not life shot as is. Documentary is not an indexical representation of reality either, because what happens is that, when we juxtapose fiction and non-fiction, we say fiction is all made up, all constructed, and non-fiction is real. And we as filmmakers challenge that notion also. We challenge the notion that we are capturing reality, we are working with real people, but there is an engineering of that reality that takes place. There's a crafting of their lives that takes place. There's manipulation also. And I mean, it's very simple, no, it's selection also. It's like, I have gone and shot a film for 2 years, and I have footage which is like 80 hours of footage, and I am making a film which is only 1.5 hours. So automatically I have done certain kind of selections from this mass footage, to be able to put together a narrative. So the constructedness of documentary form, I just wanted to sort of put it out there, also the idea that reality can be captured in as it happens to us, we counter that with a more nuanced understanding of that documentary is an argument about the world we live in. It's my version of reality. It's my understanding of this world that I go to represent. So like I said, if you today go to Bihar and make a film on Bhikhari Thakur, it would be real, and a film that would be a documentary. And if I go, then I will also be making a film on Bihar, and it might not, and our films will be different, right? So I wanted to also say that documentary filmmaking is a subjective experience of reality. It's subjectivity is at the core of it, and there are certain aesthetic choices that we make, certain political choices that we make, to be able to also highlight the fact that this is a subjective experience. So in 2018, Janendra and I made this film. If somebody else makes it right now, it will be a different film, and a third person making it will be a completely different film. And all of us will actually be approaching this world from our points of view, or the argument we make. Just wanted to put all of that out there. Okay. I will take everybody into the introduction of the film, and I'll show like some clips of the film so that we have something more coherent and concrete to talk about. But before I show the film, I just wanted to quickly say, and this is just adding on to what Shubha had already said, Nach Bhikhari Nach is a film we made in 2018. And it looks at the lives of 4 performers who were originally trained under Bhikhari Thakur. So these are Launda Nach performers, they cross dress. So the men become women and perform on stage. That's a very important part of this performance tradition. Secondly, the idea of Launda. The word Launda in very simple terms translates to, a young man, a young effeminate boy would be Launda. But within certain contexts, this, and especially in the context that we made the film, this translates into a certain, actually it's a stigmatized word. It's a derogatory word. When you're referring to somebody as Launda, it is out of complete disrespect. And of course it has caste connotations. So just wanted to say that. And like Shiva said, there is obviously a lot of controversy around the word Launda and calling this performance tradition Launda Nach. More on that as I go on in the lecture. And the other thing that I wanted to say was, like Shubha said, Bhikhari Thakur was prolific. His years were 1887 to 1971. He has written more than 20 plays, 36 songs, plays, monologues. He was a social reformer, and he was very deeply rooted in the society, and his works were very deeply rooted in the society and the social realities of the societies, that he was performing in, and all these performers were performing in. And of course, he was called Rai Bahadur, or the Shakespeare of Bhojpuri. More on that later, but let me quickly show you the opening of the film so that people have a sense of what are we looking at, and then I will take you forward with the next round. One second. Shubha, can you see this? My screen? You can, yeah?
Yeah, screen is there. Yes, we can see the screen.
So let me know if there's a lag, okay? You can just speak in.
हेलो 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 हेलो
भोजपुरी सम्राट में, ए भोजपुरी मार्केट में हर एक किस्म के सौदा बा। दुकान सजा दहन गइल बा, गहकी बाबू लोग के काम बा कि सौदा खरीद के अपना घरे ले ले चल जाए के काम बा। आज हमने के जमन कार्यक्रम चले तो भोजपुरी में चले, भिखारी ठाकुर के तमाशा बनावल विदेशिया, बाकी खाली रूप बदले में तनिया सा विलम्ब हो गइल बा। ऐसे श्रोता समाज शांति बनाए, अपना अपना स्थान ग्रहण कर लेवे के काम बा। हमने के जमन कार्यक्रम चले तो भोजपुरी में चले। हेलो 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 हाय नाम भिखारी रहे मगर का बात लाइट काहे के देखावत है? हाँ ऐसे लाइट मत मारी। हेलो नाम भिखारी रहे मगर, नाम भिखारी रहे मगर रहलन स्वभाव से राजा। कतिना गोढ़ पर फहरा दिहलन भोजपुरी के धाजा।
Was that smooth? Was that okay, Shiva? Yeah, that was fine. Okay. So this was the opening of our film, just to give our listeners here a sense of what is the Londa Nach performance tradition in Bihar, and what does it look like? What does it feel like? And like I said, it starts at 10 in the night and goes on till 5 in the morning. And some of the decisions that we as filmmakers, actually, let me come back to my decisions, but let me quickly sort of take one step back and tell you about the collaboration that I did. So this film came about when my co-director Jainendra Dost, who's from Bihar, from Chhapra, and has done his doctoral research on Bhikhari Thakur, got in touch with me, and both of us are theatre performers. So he does theatre in the Hindi world, in the Hindi belt of Bihar, UP, and Delhi. And I am a theatre artist who has done primarily activist theatre in Delhi itself. And what was really fascinating for me, the moment I got to know about Jainendra's work, was the fact that there was somebody like Bhikhari Thakur, who was a household name, and his plays would move people. He had written so much. He's a household name in every house in Bihar and UP, from what I understood, eastern parts of UP. And I thought that in these big cultural centers of Delhi, where we see theater from all over India, we had never heard of what is theater in Bihar. The understanding of any kind of culture of Bihar was ascribed to a very certain kind of, stigma that Bhojpuri cinema is attached to. But outside that, if we have Jatra and Swang and Nautanki and Lavani, then what is the performance tradition of Bihar? And how come we have never seen it? That was one. That was one thing that was very striking. The second thing was that both of us wanted to collaborate and bring the world of theater and film together. And like I said, we face the biggest conundrum of how do we talk about this performance tradition that one is not known to most people that this film might go to. And secondly, how do you capture a performance tradition and also catch its essence and that experience, that liveness that I was talking about through a film, through a 1.5 hour film. Those were the main things. And so a lot of times as filmmakers, we actually think of our audiences and we think of what is it that we want to tell our audiences? What do you want to speak to our audiences? And one of the things we realize is that we need to bring the audiences in touch with Bhikhari Thakur. Secondly, as collaborators, again, a very big ethical challenge was that how do I, and this was my particular challenge, how do I, as an upper caste girl from Delhi, who has never experienced this performance tradition, is very privileged with regard to her gender, how can I go to another space and put a camera to their face? That is the inequality of the power position that I was talking about, and that was one of the main ethical concerns. Like, it's a very simple question that most documentary filmmakers are asked. Who are you to make this film? Especially if you're not from within the community. If it's Anand Patwardhan who's making a film, Jai Bhim Comrade, on the caste cultural revolution in Maharashtra, he's asked the same question. If I go and make a film in Punjab about drug rehabilitation centers, I'm asked the same question. And that is the question. Or if I go and make a film in Kashmir today, they will say, who are you to make the film? That, I think, was at the core of what we were trying to do with this film. That this conundrum is what we were trying to capture, and made several decisions, with regard to that. So one of the things that Janendra and I did as collaborators was that we played to the idea of insider and outsider. We played to that idea that Janendra is from within the community and I'm from outside the community. But the question is, why can Shilpi still make a film on this community? And my choice of entry, my point of entry into this world was by saying that I am a theater artist who wants to look at Londa Nach performance tradition, not in a stigmatized form, not in a form that, oh, it's not known about and it's dying, not in the sense of, oh, no one knows Bhikhari Thakur, so I will be that savior filmmaker who will take Bhikhari Thakur to the world, not like that, but as a theater artist. That I'm a theater artist, I have experience with theater, and here are these artists. It doesn't matter to me if they're stigmatized in their community or not. I want to know what is there for. What are they doing? What do they do with the aesthetics and formal choices of how do they play with audiences? So my entry, both Janendra and my entry into the project was as theater artists, not as social workers and not as activists who were saviors. We made that very categorical position. And then, because both of us are both academics and practitioners, we started to deal with what is it about this performance tradition that we want to take out to the audience. So one of the main decisions that we took was that throughout the film, like you have seen the beginning, throughout the film, we will capture one night performance of Bidesiya, the most famous of Bhikhari Thakur's play. This performance that we organized in this place called Victoria Bazaar in Chhapra, we put up a tent and we sort of sent around the word that we are doing this performance, and more than 10,000 people were there in the audience, and you saw some of the audience shots over there. So we made this performance happen. This is what I'm telling you, that nonfiction is not completely nonfiction. We requested, we paid our artists, and we organized an all-night performance, and most of our budget of the film also went into that. But we knew that this performance has to be the backbone of our film, which means it has to be a thread that runs from the beginning to the end. The second thing that we did was we looked at we said that we want to actually show Bhikhari Thakur's different plays. So apart from one night performance, we wanted to make sure that how prolific he was as a writer, as a performer, should come across. So what we did was we actually identified, out of all the plays we liked, we identified 4 of his plays that we really liked. Beti Bechwa, Gabad Gachor, Pia Nisail, Videsiya, of course, and of course, apart from that, there are many others. And we said, okay, these are that these plays will be a part of our film. They will populate our film because audiences don't know Bhikhari Thakur. Now, how do we show these plays? Because our artists are, again, all of these performances are happening all night long. So how do we capture that in a small 90-minute or 70-minute film, right? So what we did was we actually, again, got one night, we set up the stage. It was like a small stage that was made in a government school, actually, which was abandoned in that village. And we invited our performers over there, and we asked those performers to perform only 15 minutes of each of these plays so that we can find glimpses of that in our film. Okay. What is very interesting is that our performers didn't like it. They didn't like it. They said, why are you making us do 15 minutes of a play when this play goes on for 4 hours? Right? Secondly, how can you make us do, one play happens one night. So how can you make us rehearse or perform for camera 4 to 5 plays per night, 15 minutes each? That's disrespectful to our performance. Right? The third thing that they put in front of us was, we don't perform without an audience. Right? So here, Janendra and me and our crew was there, and we are talking to our 16 performers in the Bhikhari Thakur Mandli, and we are putting forward this request as filmmakers, and they are rejecting this request as artists. Right? It's like you sing for half an hour, your one song is for half an hour, and somebody saying, "Isko please thoda cut karke de do." You realize? And that is when we had to step back. That is where we had to step back and actually explain to our artists, these theater artists, who are actually, most of them are in their 60s, 70s, 80s. We had to explain to them that we are making a film. We are making a film and we are shifting mediums. And through this film, there are many things that will happen. And there are many different ways in which you will see your own work. So this is the difference. We had to actually sit our artists down and explain the difference between documenting and making a documentary film. What is a film? A film is, again, like I said, not naively just shooting, putting a camera and watching an online performance. No, it is about creating a discourse. It is about discursively looking at the performance traditions that we are engaging in as academics, as thinkers, as filmmakers, So that was a very interesting negotiation that had happened with us in the process of making the film. And what was very interesting was that when we made the rough cut and took it back to the performers, the artists who were in the film, one of them cried. One of them cried because he saw his wife on screen, and his wife had died by the time we were watching the film later. And he said, "You have made my wife immortal. She has died, but she's alive on screen. And now I understand what you have done to us and our legacy." So what was also very interesting was that, this idea that we are the more privileged one, we are the people who are rich, we are from the city, we are from the film industry, and these are people that are subjects of our documentary that we are capturing. What also happens after a while is that you have to debunk that idea. You have to open out exactly what you're doing to your subjects. And that is when the collaboration between you and your documentary subjects actually starts and becomes very organic. After that, we did do the plays, the 15-minute shoots, but only this time we had to go around the village and get lots of people to be like, listen, we are doing this thing, but we want audiences because our performers are refusing to perform without audiences. So there was an audience. And performers did perform for us. But this time they understood that we are performing not for stage, but for screen, for the frame to capture us, and many other things happen. The other thing I wanted to tell you was that thematically you enter a film also. You enter a film thematically where you look at what are your responsibilities as a filmmaker with regard to representing someone. Again, the idea comes to the politics of representation. And in that, what is really interesting is that in this political representation, we realize that cross-dressing, the politics of gender, is actually at the core of Londa Nach. It's at the core. These are men who are 60s, 70s, 80s, 90 years old, who are dressing up like women and being on stage, and there are double meaning dialogues, and there's titillation, and there's a lot of sensuality. There's a lot of bhakti, bhajan, dance, everything. It's like an all-night performance of not just play, right? And what is very interesting is that despite its popularity, it is a highly stigmatized performance tradition, and cross-dressing is a very big part of it. Men are dressing up like Londas. Men are performing. Secondly, there's caste connotation attached to it. It is considered a derogatory form. So many spaces where people from the upper caste have watched our films have been shocked at what we've done. A lot of spaces actually claim Bhikhari Thakur. Places in Delhi University, JNU, and the biggest universities that I've seen claim Bhikhari Thakur. But very nicely sort of keep aside Bhikhari Thakur's caste realities, the fact that he was from the Nai community. You know, and there's a certain kind of sanitization, and we ourselves went into some kind of I can talk about that later, a certain kind of censorship when we were talking about a film and calling a film Londa Nach, but that's probably for another time. So cross-dressing and the idea of vulgarity was at the core of what we were arguing as filmmakers. And here, actually, it's very fascinating to hear Janindra, my co-director, talk, because Janindra would keep saying, how is Londa Nach vulgar when on his own wedding ceremony and death ceremonies in their house, they called a Nach party and the Nach party performs. So the question is, who in society decides what is vulgar? You know, if in my grandfather's death ceremony, a Londa performer comes and performs, then who is calling this vulgarity? You know, so those, and of course, like many places like UNICEF, you know, vanishing, they had this whole thing about, they were looking at indigenous cultures that are sort of vanishing. I'm forgetting the name of the project, but that project itself called Londa Nach a derogatory, cheap, lower caste form. So we wanted to challenge that. And we wanted, how will we challenge that? We were constant, and we don't know, honestly. So we constantly started watching our performers cross-dress. You know, I'm just going to show you the next clip. It's with Ramchandra Majhi. He is the oldest living Londa Nach performer who was trained under Bhikhari Thakur for more than 80 years of his life. Okay, I'll show that and I'll share.
And
more.
he has been conferred the Padma Shri, the highest civilian honor, very recently.
Yes, literally last month.
That must have been a moment of great satisfaction and happiness to you all, to you and Janindra.
We just felt very blessed to have met him, to have learned under him, and you know, we felt that our document, I don't think our documentary has a role to play in the 80 years of his career, but you feel like you have worked with a legend, you know, and learned lessons for a lifetime. So it was really heartwarming for us. So let me show you Ramchandra Majhi, you know, for everybody here, and then of course we can talk more about that.
देखवा सब नहीं है, पूरा भर गया है। और वही जे आवे वाला वो लोग के सामने अपना जमाना के श्रीदेवी ना अमिताभ बच्चन, अरे नारे मर्दे वो रामचंद्र माझी बारन। आइए आइए हरदिल अजीज आइए।
के जवड़े हम अरे उम्र हो गल 92 बरिस और रउआ सबन के सामने आज गावत तानी नाचत तानी।
काका ई बताओ जे नेताजी लोग में तहरा के सबसे ज्यादा मानेला, माने के देखेला नाच ज्यादा तोहर?
हम सब लोग देखेला के ना देखे। लालू जी बानी वहाँ ये कहवावे के मारू
रे मर्दवा हम कहे कि कोई के नाम कहवा हम तो
लालू जी बानी उहे का कहनी कि रामचंद्र जी तहरा में से हटे के नोई की ई तमाशा तहरा जीवित रखे के बा। बाबू जी उनके कहला पर आज ली केस पाक गए बूढ़ हो गए आज ले गोरले बानी। अब सब लोग बाबू तो कहा हमर बाबू सुमन बाबू ना देखिला यहाँ के ना कहिला।
हो बतावा ना पूरा नाच हो जाए लालू जी के कोठी पर, सब लोग चल जाए लालू जी के बोला के अलग से 2000 रुपया दिहन सब
तो हमर मालिक हो तो ना दी मालिक सब बात ना हम अपना बोले।
Yeah, so that was Ramchandra Maji, for us. And a lot of times, documentary films would have people who are being interviewed, people who are talking as experts. Very conventional forms of documentaries are all talking heads, where someone is putting out the discourse of some of the issues that you're looking at. But for us, we were like, we don't need any of that. Here is a 92-year-old man, now he's 95. He's a 95-year-old man who's cross-dressing and is on stage, and the audience is going crazy. This is, it was like, do we really need to give a lecture on what is vulgarity or whether it is vulgar or not? You watch him on stage and you decide for yourself what is that for you, and for us, actually, the idea of cross-dressing was something that with which we could take our cameras backstage and actually see an artist transform into the character that the artist is playing on stage, and it's actually very humbling to see that an artist who's as big as him is sitting by himself in the corner of a green room and putting his makeup on his own and transform, within minutes into an enigmatic person on stage. I have personally seen him perform at more than 20-25 stages now, and it's fascinating that some of the people in Bihar and eastern parts of UP where he was performing, when he's performing, people come and touch his feet. People say that it's through him that one can get a glimpse of Bhikhari Thakur. That was, and people gave a lot of money in Ramchandra Maji's name. And the irony is that despite being so big, such a big performer, and having performed with, endless artists and taken forward this performance tradition, the irony is that his own family members, his sons, daughter-in-laws and granddaughters have never seen him perform. Never seen him perform. That's the irony. And which also we reveal somewhere later in the film. I won't be showing you that. But what is very important for us to realize that somebody who's been awarded by Sangeet Natak Academy, by the Ministry of Culture, by the State of Bihar, is actually so deeply stigmatized for doing what he does best, his art. This, we thought we didn't have to lecture anyone about it. In documentary, we say, show, don't tell. Show it, see it. And the audience themselves will decide where on the spectrum of what is vulgar and what is sanitized in that sense do you want to stand on. It's not for us to tell you. We have told you we have shown you how we see him through our lenses. That was one thing. This also brings us to a very important point, is that remember we are doing a film on Bhikhari Thakur, but it's fascinating that even though Bhikhari Thakur died in 1971, there is not a single audio-visual documentation of his work. We have books by him, we have plays by him. There is one glimpse of him being in some 1963 Bollywood film in which you see Bhikhai Thakur, but you don't see Bhikhai Thakur otherwise. You'll have some old photographs, some read-on sketches of him, but there's no Bhikhai Thakur. So for us, we took that on and planted it in our film, and we said we will never show Bhikhai Thakur. So if you see our film, throughout the 75 minutes of the film, you don't see Bhikhai Thakur, except for the last shot where you see a murti of his. And we said that just like people see Bhikhai Thakur in Ramchandra Majhi, is how we will use all our protagonists to create an understanding of what Bhikhai Thakur was, his politics, his performance, his art, his talent, his singing, everything. You know, so it's through our protagonists that we will get a glimpse of the old man, which they called very lovingly Budhau. The other thing that we did, so that was one thing I wanted to tell you. The other thing that I wanted to share was that Bhikhai Thakur's songs were a completely different ballgame altogether. And what was very important for us as filmmakers was to also orient ourselves and record and document, not for the purpose of the film only, but for life, the tunes and the rhythms in which these songs were being sung, which by the way have also shifted. So now when you see Bhikhai Thakur's Bidesiya, which is done in Bhopal Drama School or NSD, all the stalwarts of big Delhi theatre scene will do, you will get a very different take on Bhikhai Thakur's music, which is, Bhikhai Thakur is everybody. So please understand that we're not trying to keep some idea of Bhikhai Thakur at, sorry, yes.
Yeah, I don't mind seriously interrupting you here. I mean, I'm taking the liberty because my mic is not muted by the technical team. The thing is that if you have it, I mean, if you have that famous song of Bidesiya that describes the pain and the misery of the migrant women, you know, when their husbands take off to foreign lands. I mean, that is something which will give some idea to our participants about the whole tradition of Bidesiya plays, you know, and how it entails.
Sure. What I do is
migrants.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for saying that, you know, Shubha, I was coming to that because what was very interesting was, one is that like vulgarity and cross-dressing is one core idea that we were looking at. The idea of migration, which is, like you rightfully said, is the core to so many women's realities. You know, husbands going away and living in a foreign land, working usually in Calcutta or big cities, you know. We wanted to explore that in the film as well. And what was very fascinating is that we had all these songs and tunes that our artists were singing. But again, the conundrum is we are in a small village in Chhapra. There are no studios, there are no recording places, nothing. But we wanted to keep exactly what you're saying, these songs for our repository, for our archiving. And what we did was, and this is sort of behind the scenes, we actually, again, took up another school and we took up a room. We padded the room with gaddas and curtains and lights and things like that. We went to all the local sound studios, you know, for stage shows, people rent out mics. So we got more than like 16 mics in Chhapra, and we created what we call a folk studio in Chhapra, in a small village that actually school that Janendra went to as a child. And we shot those songs over there. We shot the performances and the singing. We took that music and we brought it into the film in the ways of music videos. So our film is actually punctured with music videos. And now let me show you one. Let me show you Piya Gailan Kal Katwa Re Sajni.
Yes, exactly.
Let me show you that one. It's one of my favorites too. So let me show you that. I had actually marked it somewhere.
We teach diasporic literature to our students, our English honors students in Delhi University, and I'm sure other universities and places also have a paper like that in their syllabi. But we never talk about interstate migration, you know, within our country that's happening. I mean, because those who have experienced, who have gone out of the country, they can speak English, they can write English, they can express, and they can even, encash, or you can say they can take advantage of their situation by recording their experiences. But what about these people, who migrate from one city to another city in search of better life and better career, and from one state to another state? And this has been going on since ages. And Bidesia has preserved it, and it has actually sensitized people, all over the world.
So right, there's another filmmaker called Survi Sharma. She has made a film called Bidesia in Bombay, because all the migrant workers from UP and Bihar who are in Bombay actually have a subculture of performances which are all Bhikhai Thakur's work, and migration is at the core of that thing. You're migrated away from town, no? There are 100, absolutely. So that is another film to look out for. And the subculture of wherever this is, whether it's Mauritius or it's America, or if it's Bombay or wherever the migration has happened across states, especially between Bihar and Bengal. It has been there for a very long time. So let me show on your special request. And I was thinking if I should or not, but let me do that. And also then I'll talk about, again, our aesthetic choices of shooting this the way we shot it. Okay.
किया गइलन काला कातावाए सजनी किया गइलन काला कातावाए सजनी तुरी दिहला ना पति पत्नी से नातावाए सजनी ए तुरी दिहला ना पति पत्नी से नातावाए सजनी किनी भीतरे काला कातावाए सजनी गोरावा में जूता नहीं के सिरावा पर छातावाए सजनी गोरावा में जूता नहीं के सिरावा पर छातावाए सजनी कैसे चली हन रहता ऐसे चली हन रहतावाए सजनी सोचता बीतत बाटे दिन रातावाए सजनी सोचता बीतत बाटे दिन रातावाए सजनी कतहु लागत नहीं कतहु लागत नहीं पातावाए सजनी ए लिखत भिखारी देखी कर बही खातावाए सजनी लिखत भिखारी देखी कर बही खातावाए सजनी प्यारी सुंदरी प्यारी सुंदरी के बतावाए सजनी पिया गइलन काला कातावाए सजनी पिया गइलन काला कातावाए
So this is actually a glimpse of our folk studio that we created. This is what we had done, with our this last frame is what we have done.
Heartfelt rendition. I mean, I could just totally live in that experience. And yes, this is echoing our present day reality. I mean, just imagine in the pandemic times, many people, many of the migrant laborers had to undergo the same kind of experience, and this will continue to happen.
And Shubha, what was very interesting was that for us as filmmakers, and this is like, again, giving you a little bit of glimpse of how we choose make our creative choices, or how do we think through aesthetics of a film. Now we know that the reality of migration, like you're saying, is so true for all the people who watch these songs, for people who live in these societies, right? We want to make it a part of our film. That's the political choice we make, the argument that we make, right? Now, how do you actually show it? What do you do with it? How do you work with this material that you have? And we said, okay, we will bring in something like a music video, you know, and we sort of created this whole thing, and, you know, we tried to make this happen. Then what happens is that we have to ask yourselves, what are the visuals that will go with this beautiful music, you know? And we realize that migration is not just true for the audiences of these songs. The migration is actually also very deeply embedded with the realities of our performers themselves, because they actually are going from village to village, almost working all nights of the month, and are constantly migrating, are constantly traveling. You know, at some point in the film, somebody will tell us for how many different chote prants they went to with Bhikhari Thakur back in the day, and they continue to migrate as performers trying to live their lives. So automatically for us, then Lucky Chanji, who sings this song, we were actually curious on creating visuals around Lucky Chanji's travel to make the performance. So if you see the body of the clip that I showed you, it actually has him getting ready, you know, packing his bag, getting onto a rickshaw, then somebody else gets onto an auto, then somebody else gets onto a boat, then another person gets onto a cycle. And all of our artists are actually constantly migrating to do work. These are actually migrant laborers in their own way, if you were to think of it like that, you know. And this is how we sort of then create the visuals for our film. So like I have said, the film is peppered with these songs, and we have different music videos, if you want to call it, or visual sequences for each of these songs. And those visuals are, like this one, are organically brought out of a conversation of what is migration for these people who sing about migration, you know. This is also another way, and coming back, you know, I'm just constantly trying to come back to where I started from. This is another way of understanding how you represent a performance tradition in a film. And the choices that we made as filmmakers was to say that we will not just show this performance on stage, we will also show it backstage, where you move to the stage. And we will also go further back, and we will go into the realities from where our artists actually come from, you know. And what was very, very important, so automatically the body of our film, the visual layers, become stage shows, songs and music videos, people's personal lives. And also, remember, Bhikhari Thakur was a social performer. So he used to actually at some point pause his plays and give what he called a monologue or a lecture to the audience, you know, in which he talked about politics of caste. He talked about politics of gender. He talked about the plight of women. He talked about the concerns of migration. And it was like, we didn't have to give a lecture about it. We just had to find all of this resonance in our artists themselves. So if you look at Ramchandra Maji and his relationship with his partner, his wife, who's died now, you know, his daughter-in-law will say, his granddaughter will say that he did everything. He cooked for her, he fed her, he bathed her because she was not well. And he did everything there was to do for his wife. And here's a person who becomes a person, he plays those roles of a woman all his life on stage. So which is also to say that how important it is for artists to imbibe the politics of the work they are actually putting out on stage. What is their position with regard to vulgarity? What is their position with regard to gender? And how have they treated women in their own lives? What is their relationship with regard to sexuality? What is their relationship or their politics of understanding? And how has Bhikhari Thakur's politics percolated in the artists and the work that they create? Became then our really beautiful inquiry. Okay, I'm going to just sort of sum it up and show you one last clip before we open it out for audiences. And thank you so much for really nice and overwhelming, very encouraging comments. I'm seeing them, but we can go over them in the end. I just wanted to sort of sum it up, you know, with telling you the key things that we were doing in the process of, we identified themes that we wanted to explore. We thought about our audiences, and we thought of how do we introduce. So it's an introduction to Bhikhari Thakur for Janendran. How do you introduce Bhikhari Thakur? How do you negotiate with artists in the process of making film? You know, and what do you what do you achieve by the end of what you have tried to do? And remember, again, coming back to the question I started with, it is a representation of reality. It is representation of the other. And one of the tools with which we also try to make some balance of this power equation that I was talking about in the beginning is by using a very simple tool of self-reflexivity. Without going into much theory, I will just simply say a lot of times filmmakers insert themselves in the film and reveal the fact that this is a process which is getting constructed. In very simple terms, sometimes the camera will turn to the filmmaker and the filmmaker will be seen in the film. Sometimes you hear the audience, the filmmakers' voices. Sometimes the filmmakers are protagonists of the film themselves. So what we also do is that the idea of self-reflexivity is actually a method, a tool in which you are not only capturing the other, you are also revealing the relationship that you have with the other and the negotiations of that relationship. Okay, so we took that liberty as well because, like I said, Janendra and I were insiders and outsiders of this world, right? And we had to somewhere also reveal this relationship that we had with these people that we were filming, who came from a completely different class, caste, and gender, as far as I was concerned. And what I will do is I will embed our negotiation within the body of the film itself. Okay, so I'm going to show you like a slightly longer piece, which is with Shiv Lal ji. So you have seen Ramchandra ji in the beginning, then you have seen Lakhi Chand ji in the last song. This is Shiv Lal ji, and we have another one, which is Ramchandra, who's Ramchandra Chote, but I'm not using clips of him. But these are the 4 people who populate our film. So let me just show you Shiv Lal ji, and this clip will sort of give you a sense of what we were doing to understand them at home. How are we looking at them as performers through the eyes of, we respect them and love them as performers, and also how are we revealing this relationship that we had with them, where that negotiation of the insider-outsider was taking place, and how self-reflexivity has been used. Okay, so I'm just going to do this last one, and then we can open up for questions, and it's more exciting to have other people talk than myself. Okay, let me start with actually a song. You can see a performance, another performance, and then I'll stop at some point. This is also because it's a musical documentary, so it's good to have our audiences have a musical experience of this world. Yeah. So this is Shiv Lal ji. And this is his performance at Sangeet Natak Academy in 2017, I think.
मकई कय गो रूप बा शहर में पॉपकॉर्न, स्वीट कॉर्न, कॉर्नफ्लेक्स का बनेला गांव में, लेकिन गरीब गुरबा के एगो खाना के बहुत बढ़िया मने साधन बा, ओकर पेट भरेला उससे। तब मकई के गुणगान शिवलाल जी प्रस्तुत करतानी।
ए मकई तार गुण गाथब माला, ए मकई तार गुण गाथब माला, हाथ से तड़त भव लाओ तो गरीब लव, हाथ से तड़त भव लाओ तो गरीब लव, पूरा पूरा पानी दियाला ए मकई, पूरा पूरा पानी दियाला ए मकई तार गुण धन धनारा ढाठा खात लग हर नाठा, धन धनारा ढाठा खात लग हर ना, लेढ़ा घोना सारी में झोकाला मकई, लेढ़ा घोना सारी में झोकाला ए मकई तार गुण भूजा भर झोड़ी झोड़ी यहाँ तहाँ खोड़ी खोड़ी, भूजा भर झोड़ी झोड़ी यहाँ तहाँ खोड़ी खोड़ी, खात बाल बाला मकई, खात बाल बाला गो बाला मकई तार गुण भूजा भरे झोड़ी झोड़ी यहाँ तहाँ खोड़ी खोड़ी, भूजा भरे झोड़ी झोड़ी यहाँ तहाँ खोरी खोरी खात बालो बाला गोपाला गोपाई खात बालो बाला गोपाला हे गोपाई तो भिखारी खेला जय हन मले छुमेला तो भिखारी खेला जय हन मले छु जागा सी न बहुत आया गोपाई तार गाथब माला गोपाई तार गृहस्थी आश्रम फिल्म हो हाँ नाम का रख ले बनी आखिर नाम कौन रखे के चाहिए न और अच्छा नाम रखे के चाहिए जहाँ से लोग पब्लिक का प्रभाव पड़े अच्छा नाम रखे के चाहिए कुछ जुड़ाव एक्टर डायरेक्टर के जुड़ाव ओमे जे मेन बा ओकर जुड़ाव सही नाम रखे के चाहिए अच्छा जना से चले खूब बढ़िया आ सती माई के कृपा भइल भगवान के कृपा भइल तो खूब चली हाँ खूब चली कितना दिन में तैयार हो जाएगी 2 महीने में
नॉर्मली बात कर लेते हैं
2 साल लगी का करवा लूँ कि 2 साल लगी
पहले आ रहे तो कब आ रहे याद बा
हाँ अभी उहे हो
इलाहाबाद के
अभी उहे हो जल्दी जल्दी अब तो कहो तैयार हो गए
So that was Shivlal ji, and we like I said, we wanted to also go back into the worlds that they live in, the worlds they come from, and emerge in all these spaces, their homes, and we wanted to also capture further on in the sequence. You'll see actually his encounter in a village which is completely full of upper caste people. And what position he holds socially is very, very interesting over there. But this moment we wanted to keep in the film. It was a glimpse of the many negotiations that we did, especially with Shivlal ji. He was the one who saw his wife on like I said, on screen and realized what a documentary film can do, and we kept this in. We kept this part of the film, of our negotiation with him. A lot of times he used to also catch hold of me separately and he'd be like, oh, you've come from Delhi, no? Like you also sell the film, make money, and you make sure we get a little bit as well, So after a while, it was fascinating. Here is a man who's 75, 76 years old. He has been personally with Bhikhari Thakur and has many stories to share. He knows what somebody from the city can do for him. I also know what all I can't do for him. And it's always very important to make that intention very clear. What are you here for? Because what also happens is that when we come from big cities and the film industry, so-called, into smaller spaces, there's a lot of, it's like white people's behavior. Like, you are so privileged. People look at you with so much respect. You have access into their worlds, into their lives. You have so much access to people's words. It's almost unnerving. And you can't come away with giving false promises of being saviors for their lives. You can't be. You always have to be absolutely clear of what are you here for and what is in for them and for us. And of course, as performers and theater artists, we were making a different kind of negotiations with regard to what to show, what not to show, you know. Yeah, and how this is sort of how, you know, these are just few glimpses, few reflections on how Janendra and I countered the conundrum of who are we to represent these people and this performance tradition and Bhikhari Thakur. Of course, there's so much more, like there's so much more about a film that one wants to share, but I'll stop here. I'll absolutely stop here. And I would sort of request, you know, everybody to put in questions, and through those ropes, maybe I can reveal a few more of the experiences that I would want to share.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shilpi. We are totally mesmerized by the clippings, by your descriptions, and the whole engagement that you had with the subject. And in the process, I mean, you took us through the journey of documentary making. I mean, quite literally, you did great justice to the subject that you chose for your lecture today. And I mean, we have been privileged to be able to witness your journey, your hard work, your commitment, your engagement, and the various in your position, various negotiations that you had to make, the various understandings you have to make with the indigenous artists. So all of that is much appreciable, and from the core of my heart, I thank you for doing this great work.
Thank you for calling me.
For bringing this beautiful spectacle before the world, you know, and to let them know that, you know, this is not what it is being described as. So as we know that there's a lot of politics and the way things are projected, and of course, the appearance is often not the reality. It's just the opposite of it. So often these art forms are termed as low art and uncouth and unsophisticated. And I was told by one person, I told you that we took up a minor research work on the subject of the rejuvenation of folk arts of India. And we were told that, you know, it was not, proper for women and children of elite families to visit for these performances, but everyone craved for it. I mean, we were told that, you know, there used to be so much of enthusiasm when the Nach. I mean, I really like the opening scene where you, showed the generator and the lights being fixed and the mic being tested. So all of that, the way, audience is taken into an actual show. So all of that, that reality that you created in the documentary is something that we can all relate to. All theater lovers and all lovers of folk art and culture can relate to, and it's a great service to Indian culture and civilization. And I hope that with these new digital platforms, you know, we have kind of streaming of these shows as well, so that they get more popular. And I mean, they are already popular, but it's just that because of the superimposition of these new present day shows, you know, the people are forgetting about their own culture and their own traditions. So there has to be a revival, rejuvenation. And in some of the clippings, we could also see the contemporaneization, the effort to contemporize, to connect with the modern audience, you know, description of corn and all of that, you know, the way Janendra was, talking about it, and the political influence, you know. So all of that was very interesting, and I truly loved it. And our participants have also felt the same way. And there is one small question. I mean, I am taking too many liberties today, but it's just that before please. I just want to ask you one thing. I mean, cinema has attained a huge stature at this time. I mean, it is called the 10th muse and the finest of the fine arts and all of that and whatnot. But what I want to ask is, I mean, you have journeyed, you know, you have journeyed through different platforms. You have been there in theater, and you have moved to movies, documentaries, and movies also. So do you see similar kind of emotional response, you know, I mean, in audience, in viewers, the way our folk traditions or theater performances are able to evoke? I mean, is the response the same, or what is the basic difference in the theater viewing and also a movie watching? I mean, at the level of audience, do you see? I mean, for as a movie maker, of course, there would be many differences. But as a, what do you think? What could
Shubha, like I take actually quite a comfortably easy position on this. I see all of this, whether it's music or dance or visual art or film or web series or documentary or dramatized documentary or folk theater. I see all of them under the rule of the larger umbrella of art. These are art practices, and like filmmakers, I move between the world of theater and documentary film. I have other filmmakers who move between other worlds, of creating art. So for me, I actually don't do the comparison of one over the other, one from the other. And like artists have their own mediums through which they want to express, whether it's their body or doing movement theater, or it's through puppets, or it's through singing or their poetry. Like I have actually stopped making these categories between different kinds of art forms. And as far as audience is concerned, I mean, honestly, Shubha, powerful art will make you cry. It'll just make you cry if it's that powerful, right? That it's the role of art in society to be able to look at the world differently. In the last 1 year, it has been art, whether it's films or it's theater, which we have also missed in so many ways. But my theater group was doing theater online, so we were doing other experiments. But the point is that in the last 1 year, art, films, music has also kept us going. It has a certain therapeutic function in our society. It has a critical function in our society. It's supposed to put up mirror of society. And then within that, there is, of course, different kinds of performances. And the biggest difference between art and theater for me, which is also now sort of settling with regard to audience, is just the assembly of bodies in person, in space, in a similar space, and experiencing something on stage that is happening. It doesn't matter if it's classical or folk, I miss collective viewing. And like exactly what you said at the beginning of your introduction to me, that now in the world, we are moving towards a more individualized way of accessing the arts, whether it's film or anything. It's this really absurd box in front of which we are standing today. And I actually miss the community aspect of it. And that I find at the core of the difference between film and theater in that way. Not prioritizing one over the other. It's just and we have missed theater like nothing else in the last 1 year. Because of just exactly that.
Yeah, that kind of immediacy, the connect that is there in live environment, is missing in movies and other.
And we try to do that. We try to, like with documentaries. This is why I also like documentary work so much, because we are doing what is called post-screening discussions. So it's actually a theatrical space again, and that is something I'm also arguing in my PhD. It's also a theatrical space again, and there's a give and take, and there's a performance that is taking place of the filmmaker in front of the audience. So I like spaces which discuss. I like spaces where the audience is in front of those. As an artist, I get energized.
Yeah. So without wasting any moment, I'm quickly taking some of the pertinent questions that our participants have posed for you. Okay. Yeah, this is Dr. Avik Bhattacharya, who has asked a very interesting thing. Bhikhari Thakur has often been called Shakespeare of the Bhojpuri. Now, does this adjective itself not paradoxical to a man of art who has devoted his life depicting the totally Desi culture? How can a man of subversive culture of Indian society be compared to a poet and playwright of Elizabethan age? I think there is some problem with the articulation of the question, but otherwise it makes some sense. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Why was he called? Like, why do we need some other markers to be able to highlight how big our artists were? And this has been happening.
Servility syndrome. That was servility syndrome.
Yeah, it has been that. But the thing is also that, the moment you call somebody Shakespeare of something, it also brings all the eyeballs in.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
We have also used it to our advantage whenever we wanted to. You want to bring more eyeballs in, and this is the kind of language that will get catered, then why not? And he has been called that, and we didn't call him that. you know. But why do you need these markers? Why is some place in India the Switzerland or somewhere? Or why is this some, you know, why do we need these external markers to bring ourselves up? And the sad thing is that probably in folk theater, and you know, I also wanted to say that folk theater and Bhikhari Thakur's work, or this Nach Mandali's work, or our artists, it's not vanishing, Shubha, at least not with this performance tradition. There, just 5 kilometers around Janindra's village, there are more than 90 Nach parties. Some are doing dance, some are doing whatever, but that's how thriving it is. And I told you, one show week organized from nowhere, 5,000, 10,000 people are there all night. Women, men, children, uncle, auntie, dada, dadi, everybody is there. Okay. So what also happens is that I feel like there's a view in which people from different spaces look at folk theater. Sometimes it's with a lot of patronizing gaze, sometimes it's a benevolent gaze. But the truth is also that in our world, certain art forms got classicalized, no? And some of them got left behind. And then folk theater. So it's also the question of who is tagging this Bhikhari Thakur, who feels the need to equate Bhikhari Thakur to Shakespeare. And honestly, there are benefits of it as well, to be honest with you. It sells, so why not? Somebody who should be known, you know? So I think it's about the negotiations you make with these kind of terminologies.
So true. So moving on to the next question, Aisha Varsi makes a comment and she says she found Nach Bhikhari Nach as a wonderful combination of Bakhtin's carnivalization and Shakespeare's cross-dressing that reflects polyphonic aspects of one particular community. Ma'am, would you attach any specific postmodern context to it?
You know, after a while we say that filmmakers are done, the author is dead. Please, the film has to have prolific meanings. It has to have different interpretations. And if this is the way in which you see it, which by the way is very fascinating to hear, Bakhtin, you know, being brought into the conversation with Bhikhari Thakur. Bhikhari Thakur and Bakhtin would be a great paper to write. You know.
Okay,
yeah. So I'm absolutely open to this. And do I ascribe any kind of postmodernist thing? I mean, honestly, I could go on a conversation about it, but that would be my reading. You know, I have thought of this film very differently. And I've thought of this performance tradition in a very different way. But all readings are invited.
But how justified it is, you know, after more than 100 years, we celebrated the death anniversary of Bhikhari Thakur at JNU, I remember. So, I mean, there are certain centers in the country. I mean, due to paucity of time, I would say I would not name them. But yes, they are doing a lot in the field of preserving and promoting cultural traditions of India. So that is one way. But what am I saying is that today now, when the so-called privileged, people, you know, from certain with certain advantages are able to talk about Bhikhari Thakur in English or in a foreign language, that doesn't mean that he has to be judged from the parameters, you know, of the Western standards or the Western theatrical standards. I mean, it's just not justified. It's not fair, I would say. And he has to be located in the context of Indian culture, Indian society, and his paramount concern was with social evils, social ills in the society. I mean, with that reformist occupation that he took so seriously and earnestly through his writing. I mean, I can't. You were deliberating on the subjects that he chose for his plays. I mean, there's not a single subject, single social evil that he has not talked about in his plays. He talked about the way we treat our elders, you know, the senior citizens, how they are neglected and ignored by their families. So certain plays are very interesting. There's this old one.
Shubha, I mean, honestly, I see this as, I remember at the beginning of it, we used to, because you're also working with people who have worked with Bhikhari Thakur, you have a tendency to keep him close to your whatever and be like, we know the real Bhikhari Thakur and, you know, you are all diluting this. Yeah. We had to let go of that position, to be very honest.
Okay.
Because Bhikhari Thakur sabke hai na, he belongs to anybody. If I am today drawing inspiration from Toni Morrison's life and drawing inspiration from Amrita Pritam for some kind of writing that I do, and somewhere else in maybe some kind of, you know, the point is these are artists and they belong to the world. And whoever accesses them from whatever point of view, from their own context, we use Othello to understand what's happening. You know, some Bollywood film will happen and we'll appreciate that, because this is also the beauty of some of these writers. Across different cultural contexts, you are able to make them your own. you know.
Yeah, and with the postmodernism and deconstructionism, setting in, we know that there can be multiple layers and everything needs to be explored. And the
Yes. I mean,
yeah. But, one or two more questions, and because we have another session lined up,
Sure.
this is yeah. What is your view on the migration of students and their stage shows in and around Delhi, especially DU? Like Laborer, they also migrate and often gather at annual functions. I mean, this is Gulzar Hussain. If you can make
About
us
students who are in DU theater, I have been one of them when I was in college, and to be very honest, yes, they move around, they take their stuff around, and they're going to colleges outside Delhi also, but what also is very sad about DU theater scene, and I wish it had changed because I was also very much deeply embedded into it about 10-15 years back, was the fact that that's theater for competition. That's the saddest thing about Delhi University Theatre. It's theatre for competition. I went to a university, a college which was very, 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 very elite, very, high rank. And you were nobodies if you didn't win anything, So I think it has to be more of a celebration of theatre than a competition of theatre, Are artists moving around and migrating with their work? Yes, but what is the motivation with which they're doing it, and that's not something that students can decide. It's structurally what institutions can decide, what to do with theater. I really think that theater competitions is a blot in the name of theater, and I think that in Delhi University, more writers.
I don't want to counter your argument, but the thing is that I would just like to add to, here what you have said, that in our college, we have a tradition of celebrating theatre. And in fact, every year we celebrate a theatre festival, for 3 days, where we showcase the dramatic performances of our novice performers. So it is like we are doing that.
That's so nice to hear. That's really nice to hear that.
Society Gayan is doing a remarkable work in that aspect, and we keep them involved throughout the year, with meaningful performances and all of that. Yeah, one more thing, I just wanted to read out one or two comments and things that our participants have said, because this is basically their platform to interact with you, and they are so happy and content to have this session with you today. Yeah, this is Neha Pandey. Is documentary filmmaking a deliberate attempt to alter their viewers' relationship to a subject by recontextualizing it? Also, do you think if people from any marginalized or misrepresented or underrepresented community attempt to make a film in order to create awareness about themselves, does it make the attempt more objective and closer to truth? Can documentary films allow communities to exercise cultural citizenship?
Okay, you have the 3 questions. Will you tell me the first one, then I'll answer that.
Yeah, this is a documentary filmmaking, a deliberate attempt to alter their viewers' relationship to a subject by recontextualizing it.
I mean, honestly, documentary filmmaking for me is like long form journalism. It is about presenting your version of the world to people. It may be alternative from mainstream media, of mainstream films, because documentary, because of its own historical context, occupies a different place in this world, but a lot of filmmakers are also making films which are saying very obvious things, which are not necessarily turning the context and the arguments around. There are all kinds of documentary films, but the idea is that when you choose to be in a non-mainstream profession, which is so-called quote-unquote independent world, whether you make fiction or non-fiction, you are making things and saying things with the mainstream industries, where the media or film industries will not let you tell. On top of that, you're also not only recontextualizing the argument, or you're also finding new forms, new aesthetic forms to tell it. Because again, the mainstream film industry will push for a certain kind of a film. And you sort of act according to little rebellious, I think, documentary filmmakers are. They choose to be in this world. It has no money. Sorry, will you repeat? Will you just continue with the other part of the
Yeah,
question?
the second part of the question says, do you think if people from any marginalized community attempt to make the film in order to create awareness, will that attempt be more objective and closer to truth?
It'll be a subjective attempt. I don't think there's anything, any documentary can be objective. Any piece of writing, any art, nothing is objective. I think.
Not be, yes.
But if somebody from within the community makes it, to be very honest, I mean, will it be more or less is actually not something I would agree with. But if somebody from the community makes it, it's actually a really beautiful experience for themselves as well as for the community. Consider, I mean, of course, keeping many parameters in mind, you know, and people should be encouraged to represent themselves, and people should also have the freedom to represent who they don't belong to. So make a film, no matter who you are, I should be able to go tomorrow and make a film on Amazon forests. I have been able to go to Punjab that I don't belong to and make a film on people. So no matter where you're from, where your own location is, you have to deal with certain ethics of representation, like I have and Janendra has in this film, you know. So just because you're within the community doesn't mean you'll give a better picture. Your ethical positions might be completely fraught. That interrogation is important.
Yeah, at this point, Shilpi, I would like to sum up. Thank you for this hearty conversation and for bringing the entire spectrum of documentary making to our purview, and for educating us, for enlightening us, for sharing with us the challenges that you have faced as a documentary maker, and this riveting delivery of the subject. It has been totally worth the time, and we will continue, participants, we will continue with the discussion on the folk traditions with Mr. Satish Anand joining us in the next week. And Satish Anand and Abhinav Upadhyay and many others are there who are working in the field, and it's not that people are not aware of these folk traditions, but yes, more work needs to be done, and people need to invest time and their energy into all of this. And so a hearty thanks to you, Shilpi, for joining us, for accepting our invitation, taking time out, and our principal, Honorable Gyantosh Kumar Jhaji, for encouraging us to take up this kind of refresher work with such meaningful engagements with film makers and directors and even academics, from diverse fields, and some out of the side support. I mean, great support that we received from Ravinder and Amit Vishwakarma, and to Vinita Tuli, the convener of the program. On this note, I thank all our participants for their patience, for their interest, and for their support throughout the sessions. We'll meet soon. And thank you, Shilpi. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shubha. Thanks.
Sridharamji, are you there? Over to